Well, Asa Ellerup, we're going to talk about her for a little bit. John Ray, the attorney for some of the victims of the Gilgo Beach serial killer. Obviously, the accusations are against her husband, Rex Heuermann. John Ray back out there in public saying, I think we need to know a little bit more about you, Asa, and where you were at the times of some of these murders, because he has uncovered some inconsistencies in her story. She, of course, maintains her innocence, has never been charged with any sort of crime to date. I think it's a fair question. I don't know that some of these inconsistencies, and we are looking all the way back to 2007, are of all that much of a note. But certainly, it should be taken a look at it. And I do think that there's probably more knowledge with Asa than we are aware of. But I'm sure 50 Cent and G Unit will get that out of her in the documentary that they're making.
That's right. Forgot about that.
Again, just one of the strangest sentences, I ever thought I would say when we used to play 50 Cent and G Unit on the radio, that 20-some years later we'd be talking about 50 Cent and G Unit investigating the Long Island serial killer. Anyway, the wife of him, Asa Ellerup, in light of this new evidence that seems to be possibly contradicting her alibi, her attorney saying, no, it really doesn't. It's kind of a gray area, to be completely honest. But you know what? John Ray has been a force in this and really has brought a lot of things to light before necessarily other charges have come up. So I think taking in information is an important thing here. Brainard-Barnes, a sex worker. This is one who Rex Heuermann was just charged with, the fourth victim. Went missing in July of 2007. Her body found in December of 2010 on a Long Island beach alongside the remains of three other women, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello, all of whom Heuermann is accused of murdering. Previously, District Attorney Ray Tierney's office had asserted that travel and cell phone records indicated that Asa Ellerup, Heuermann's wife, and her children were out of state when these women disappeared, establishing their alibi. There was evidence that was given that did establish that. However, during a symposium at St. John University just the other day, Attorney John Ray presented new evidence challenging this claim. He questioned the use of the phrase on or about in court documents, suggesting that the actual timeline of Ellerup's whereabouts may differ from what had been previously assumed. Ray claimed to have received information indicating that Ellerup and her children may have checked into their Atlantic City hotel later than originally reported, potentially altering the timeline of their movements. The bank statement cited in the court documents highlighted the transaction for the flagship hotel on July 14th of 2007, with an arrival date listed as July 7th, just 2 days before Brainard-Barnes disappeared. However, the manager of the hotel allegedly stated that Ellerup checked in on July 17th. John Ray emphasized the significance of these discrepancies, stating, if these records are correct, then the district attorney is not right, and Asa Ellerup was not away July 7th, 8th, 9th, or July 10th, raising questions about the alibi. Notably, hairs belonging to Ellerup and her children were found near the victim's remains, prompting Ray to call for a renewed focus on the family's potential involvement. In response to these claims, Victoria Heuermann's attorney, Ves Metev, criticized Ray's remarks as unhinged and conclusively disproved by factual evidence. He suggested that Ray's statements were an attempt to gain attention. District Attorney Ray Tierney's office declined to comment on the new evidence, and Asa Ellerup's attorney, Bob Macedonio, has not yet responded to these allegations. Rex Heuermann, whose DNA was linked to the murders of the Gilgo Four, is under investigation in connection with various cold cases across the country. John Ray has consistently called for Asa Ellerup to be investigated as a potential accomplice in his alleged crimes. Despite these developments, Heuermann's wife maintains her innocence and has denied any involvement in the murders. She's expressed shock and disorientation following her husband's arrest. However, tipsters have alleged that she was aware of Heuermann's activities and even participated in the nonviolent sexual encounters with him.
Ew.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of allegations flying around here. it's not going to be anything easy to get to the bottom of it, especially when we're talking about dates from roughly 20 years ago, and receipts. And one receipt says you checked in here, another one says you didn't. These are also timeshares that we're talking about, which you have a little more leeway for checking in and out of them. I've been saying it from the beginning, though. I'm like, how do you prove your alibi? She does have credit card receipts showing that she was in another state at the time of some of these things going wrong. The date of the check-in, that's questionable. I don't know. I don't know where you go from here to find out more information other than, I don't know, maybe sitting down and interrogating her and having a really in-depth trying to have a conversation, which, as far as we're aware, has not really necessarily taken place yet.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's just take, for example, I'm trying to think where I've been. And granted, this was back in 2007 that they're talking about credit card charges, but I've been to places where I've had a transaction one day and it gets posted like 2 to 3 days later. Mm-hmm. So to me, that doesn't seem like a really good timestamp of where she's been, because it depends on when they close the batch on that credit card machine. I mean, I used to work retail. I know how these things work. If you didn't close the batch, it wasn't dated for that date. It was dated for when you closed it and reconciled it. So, if somebody maybe was out of town and didn't do the books, maybe it showed her checking in at a later date when she was actually there. And I'm not defending her, but back in 2007, things weren't as advanced as they are now. That's 17 years ago.
I hear you. I mean, and I don't know if there's more evidence. I believe there was something I was reading as well where John Ray had contacted the actual hotel and had tried to have them look back at the records. And there were areas where it said check-in date. But I don't know. I mean, it's a mess. It's a giant mess to try and say you were here or you were not here.
Yeah.
I think it's hard enough to place Rex Heuermann exactly where he was. But the fact that there's a lot of evidence here, you have eyewitness testimony, sworn testimony that says that she was at some of these parties. Again, not part of the crime or anything of that nature, but meaning murder. And your hairs are on the victims. I'm sorry. You should be looked into further. It doesn't mean you're guilty. It means you could be a completely innocent bystander. It may at the worst mean that, you were involved with your husband's weird, sick sexual life, which
is not a crime.
Not
who knows
a crime.
What lines they crossed.
Or it means you had no idea, which could be a thing too, which she claims. Or maybe you were aware but didn't participate in his life, and it was just kind of the arrangement you all had. But these are questions that need to be answered because there's a lot of dead women that seem to be connected to your husband. And it's not a stretch to ask the spouse, what did you know? When did you know it? Tables turned. I think it would be, I think both would be arrested if it was her that was charged with these crimes and she was the one out doing this sort of thing. And his hair was found there. I think he would be incarcerated right now. The fact that there hasn't been even very much of a semblance of an investigation into her other than, some of these basics that we have here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I wonder why she's being shielded in that way. For her hair to have shown up on the victims, at least one of the victims, to me, that calls into question, was she part of this? Yes, I understand. Yeah. I've even heard that my husband says he has my hair on him at times.
Sure. I mean, we share, we laundry. I mean, there's,
right.
I don't know how many people live in my house. I honestly don't know off the top of my head. Let me count here. 1, 2, we got, how many are there?
Like, Tony, 6. You should know this.
There's 6 people that live in my house. And there is, there's one laundry room. There's one thing for washing and drying. And you end up with other people's hair on your stuff every now and then. Doesn't, that's, I get how they could have transferred to those bags, but at the same point, it was found on a body. So sorry, you got to be looked into a little bit more. And you got nothing? Let's clear this and be done. But I don't know. But the depth as to the clearing is what I think is very much in a gray area right now. Because all we hear from the attorneys is that, well, there hasn't been any sort of questioning, but she's has nothing to do with it. Well, okay, let's figure this out in greater detail. And let's stop talking about the damn woman and move on with the investigation. But I don't know why we can't just get to that point. Or is there something she knows that people don't want out? It's a tale as old as time.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on True Crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.